back and bigger than ever. It's the unofficial 40 from Soonerscoop.com. Now, here's the entire Sooner Scoop crew. Carrie, Josh, Eddie, and Bob.
All right, welcome back. It is another edition of the Unofficial 40 podcast. The entire crew is here, and we're going to give you a little bit of a break off the start. We've been Porter Moser heavy over the last couple of days because Porter's had to say, and you know what? After watching Virginia last night, he should have another press conference today. I think, Eddie, you called that last night, that he should just go ahead and have a press conference just to rip on how sucky Virginia and how sucky Jacob Groves was on that fucking team. I didn't even know that.
That should have immediately not put them in the tournament.
I mean, I didn't know Jacob Groves was in Virginia.
Should it say something if I bark it, by the way? I'm doing all the marking here for the F-bombs.
No, it won't say anything. Okay. It's scary.
Just hit it. Okay.
Yeah, Eddie's in charge of bleeping the F-bombs today.
What if we just kept him in today? It's spring break.
It's not post-OSU. It's not post-Bedlam.
Yeah.
When there were too many to mark.
Still apologize.
Virginia was an abomination to the sport of college basketball. The sport that, there are not a lot of teams that can score the ball at a high rate, get up and down the floor, but that was miserable last night. And this isn't even an Oklahoma statement. Like, St. John's should have been in before Virginia. Yeah. I could even get to the point of arguing for Seton Hall, Pittsburgh, OU, Indiana State.
Pittsburgh played pretty well in their tournament.
Anybody would have been better than what we saw from Tony Bennett's group last night.
We're all blocked by Jeff Capel, so we can't. I
think I am still.
We can't stoop for Pitt.
That's fine.
Anyway, welcome.
I'll ride with St. John's. That's fine. Or
welcome,
Oklahoma.
everybody. I guess we should address first the bomb we dropped on the message board before we started the podcast, and that being DeMarco Murray. By the way, I would just fair warning here. I'm on radio vacation this week, even though I did a radio function yesterday in Oklahoma City. So most of my nights have been spent drinking and listening to Kings of Leon's new album. So I apologize to Jared. He'll probably never let me do it again because I just constant feedback to him, not always positive, and I think he's probably sick of me by now. So it's much better this time though, because last time they came out with the album, they're getting ready to release it, and then Rudy Gobert happened, like literally right as they were getting ready to release it. So I sat with that thing for like a year and a half.
That's right. You listened to it like the night before that whole Rudy Gobert thing or something. Like, wasn't it right? I mean, literally that close? It
really was that week. I mean, and then the world shut down. And they couldn't tour. Nobody could tour. And so they had to hold the record until, like, things opened back up. So I'm a pain in the ass. It's official. And I know Jared listens to the podcast.
You're telling the listeners. We all work with you. We're aware.
Yes, that's kind of how it goes. Anyway, so we dropped the bomb that DeMarco Murray in Ohio State has become a thing. And it to the point that it has others in the football offices worried. And like I said, I put this on the Crimson Corner before we started podcasting, so it's no big secret. But he has been in constant contact with Joe Castiglione and Brent Venables last couple of days. What we didn't know was that his wife is from Ohio.
Cincinnati.
Cincinnati specifically. George with the details, as always. And there was a certain appeal, allure. They have a lot of kids, a lot of young kids. To be back around her family was appealing to them. And, of course, we know Ohio State, they pay a lot. And their running backs coach that left for Michigan, he was like in the 800s, wasn't he? Even before that?
$773,000. DeMarco Murray was getting paid $575,000, which would have still been top 10 in the country for running backs coaches. I believe Alford was second or third in the country, highest paid.
I'd had someone told me his offer from Ohio State was 800 or a little bit north of.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. So I can tell you minute by minute as we go. I haven't put this on the board. I know Eddie has talked to some sources that say that they feel like this is turning in OU's favor now. I have also been told
there's a lot of, I think that this is where we kind of started at, like, didn't take it very seriously, then went, oh, okay, and then went, holy shit, he really might leave. But I think right now it's a very much I'd have to almost see it to believe it type of situation.
Yeah, I was told that they believe it is really in OU's favor right now. Nobody is exhaled at this point.
Sure.
But they feel like the offer that they've made, they have come back and made, I can tell you this, they've made a multi-year offer to DeMarco, which doesn't happen, 3 years is what I'm told. Doesn't happen often for position coaches. You usually have to be a coordinator for that to happen. So that would be unique. That gives him, and let's face it, DeMarco's doing a great job recruiting. You can argue all you want. I know people on the board did about, his running back rotations and how that's played out. I think, injuries have been a big part of that. Obviously Javonte Barnes, which we've talked, till we're blue in the face about. On the field stuff, yeah, you can kind of be critical of that, but recruiting wise, Josh, you can speak to this. I don't know, even going back to the Cale Gundy era, that anybody's done a better job of recruiting running backs.
Yeah, somebody asked me in board chat, hasn't his recruiting kind of lagged behind Cale Gundy's? And DeMarco's been in Oklahoma for 5 years, and you look at the classes, there's no comparison. DeMarco has been a much better out-of-the-gate recruiter than Cale Gundy was. Now, obviously, Gundy hit his stride with guys like Peterson and Murray himself. But the early returns are good. I think where we are a little bit unknown is what you were talking about, Kerry, is how is he going to develop these guys? How is that going to come along? And I don't think it's been bad so far. I think we honestly don't know yet.
Well, DeMarco is an old school coach. We've seen it out on the practice field. He's barking at guys. He's getting after guys. He's coaching kids the way that he was coached and brought up. And, you can't argue with the success that DeMarco had, both in college and the NFL. And we've seen guys leave. We've seen guys transfer that probably didn't take to his coaching style as well. But that's just who he is and who he's going to be. But I think the players that do take it well are going to produce for him. And I think we saw that with Gavin Sawchuk as the season went on.
I would also say there's this narrative out there that he has not developed OU's running backs, and in a certain degree, I would maybe agree. But you look at what he did, and I know that he didn't recruit Kennedy Brooks, and he didn't really recruit Eric Gray, but those two guys had the two best seasons of their careers with under DeMarco. He's had one really bad year in terms of what happened in the running back room, and it was this last year. And I still think we don't know the full story on what exactly happened in that room. And you look at what Gavin Sawchuk did at the end of the season, he developed into a really good starting running back. So I just think that DeMarco is underappreciated sometimes. And I know everybody's mad at him about the rotation last year, but I do.
For all we know, it was out of his control.
Right.
If Javonte Barnes really was injured, or if he went through setbacks in his rehab or whatever that happened in August after we talked to him, we don't have to rehash that, but we just don't know.
We also you can't question the talent.
I don't think he's an idiot.
Yeah. He's also just brought in some really good talent. So I think this would, if he ends up leaving, which I'm kind of leaning towards, I don't think he will, it would be somewhat of a big loss. Not to say they couldn't go out and hire somebody very qualified for the job, but I do think it would be a fairly significant loss. And I do think he's going to get paid. Either way, if he leaves for Ohio State, he's obviously going to get paid.
Sure.
And if he stays in Oklahoma, it sounds like Oklahoma has made a pretty damn good offer back to him.
And if he stays, I think that kind of settles things for a long while, just in terms of if it is a 3-year deal, he's going to get the money. Like you said, George, you can kind of exhale in a way and know that the running back room for the foreseeable future is going to be in really good shape.
And I would also reiterate, this is not about the money. This isn't DeMarco saying, "Oh, I'm the lowest paid offensive assistant on staff. I need to go somewhere else that's gonna pay me more money." I don't think it's ever been about the money necessarily for DeMarco. I'm sure the money is nice, but he's not sitting there complaining every single year, "Oh, I need a bigger raise. I need more money." I don't think it's about that. I think for him, he looks at what gives me the best opportunity to further my career, and I think that he thinks he can do that at either Oklahoma or Ohio State. Ohio State might just give him a better option in terms of family stuff.
And I think here's one thing, too, just talking to people this week. I think the real concern, and will continue to be a concern, is DeMarco in the NFL. Because I think he's had opportunities. He's talked to teams. They've been interested. I think that
you made note of it on the board. Just this past week in terms of him and the interest from the NFL.
He has been interested or interviewed recently by an NFL team, and you guys know, George, you know how that works. NFL teams don't want that kind of information out there. But, I mean, I don't think that will be the last time that an NFL team will come looking at DeMarco.
No, and again, to talk about the money, like there's a lot of NFL teams that do not pay their position coaches as much as some of these college teams. I mean, I don't think there's a ton of running backs coaches in the NFL that are getting paid $800,000.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's about the money. It's what does DeMarco want to do in his career, and I do think he has an interest in maybe going to the NFL, but it has to be the right gig and with the right coaching staff, and that hasn't come up yet. So could that come up this offseason or next year or whenever? Yeah, definitely. But I don't think that is something that has come his way yet. I also don't know, does he want to be a play caller? Like, does he want to be an offensive coordinator?
I was about to say, like, that's something that, because we don't get to talk to DeMarco that much, it never really comes up. Like, what is his aspirations as far as being just a coach in general? Does he want to be a head coach? Does he want to be an offensive coordinator? Does he want to be a guy that is responsible for putting together a game plan throughout the week? I really don't know. By the way, the average salary for an NFL assistant in 2024 is the most recent I could find, was about $400,000.
Yeah, so you're going to make more money most likely at most colleges. And I also would say too, I've said this several times, I think of all the people on staff, he is somewhere in the top half of being a next head coach. Like, I think Seth Littrell could be a next head coach. Zach Alley now, I think, could be a head coach soon. And I would put DeMarco Murray up there. I think that he could make kind of like a Shane Beamer type leap where all of a sudden maybe he hasn't called plays or anything like that yet, but somebody gives him a chance to be a head coach somewhere, maybe at a smaller school.
And you think about, where we've come since Brent took over. Like, DeMarco was literally in limbo a little bit when Lincoln Riley left, and we didn't know, like, is he going out there? And remember, OU kind of had to make a push, like, hey, just wait until we hire somebody, and you'll get taken care of. But nobody knew 100% if that was going to happen, and it did. And
I know that there's some people also saying, well, DeMarco wanted to be the offensive coordinator, promoted to co-offensive coordinator when they promoted Seth Littrell and Joe John Finley. I'm pretty sure from my understanding, DeMarco was in favor of Seth Littrell and Joe John Finley getting those promotions. So
he was.
Like, I don't think it's one of those situations where he was mad that he wasn't the one promoted. Like, I think he was an advocate for what happened with the offensive coordinator position.
So a little bit of intrigue during spring break when nothing's going on and players are not on campus. They will get back going on Monday, so it's almost the next time we pod, we'll probably have, I would hope, been out to a practice and seen some players run around, see some of the new guys. I know I've seen a lot of stuff on social media. The soul trips are going on. I think they're one is in Rio and the other is
Hawaii.
Hawaii, that's right.
Yeah.
Bob screaming from off the picture. We're not on picture. By the way, enjoyed meeting a lot of you guys yesterday out at Twin Peaks doing the 68 team giveaway. And yes, the most requested thing was, when is everything going to be on audio? I know the U40 has always been on audio, but we got a little bit of a rebuild, renovation going on. As soon as all that's taken care of here, I would say definitely by the start of football season, but sometime in the summer, everything will be on audio and YouTube eventually. So U40 is the outlier on the YouTube and the only one so far. So, but yeah, go check us out on youtube.com. Also, as practice gets ready to start rolling again, remember, $1 for a month. Go sign up at Sooner Scoop. You don't need to enter a special promo code, nothing like that. Just go sign up. If you haven't been a member, go click on the login, sign up, $1. We'll get you all our spring coverage for the most part up until the spring game. But you won't want to leave once you're there. I think we know that. All right, this segment has been brought to you by Enjoy. It is our fresh perspective, a look around. And you know what? I found my old glasses sitting around since I've had LASIK like 15 years ago. It's like when it gets dark, it's kind of harder for me to see. I put on my glasses, and remember, I'm on radio vacation, so a little bit of drinking's going on. And I watched TV with my old glasses, and I think I need glasses again. But Eddie doesn't have to worry about that.
We would suggest LASIK for everybody, but maybe for you. At Enjoy Vision is the best laser vision center in Oklahoma City. Not even close. The combination of mind-blowing technology, experienced eyeball surgeons, and exceptional patient care was life-changing for me. What Enjoy is doing for every unofficial 40 listener is they're giving $400 off LASIK. All you got to do is go to enjoywithme.com. That is the letter N, J-O-Y, withme.com, and use promo code U40. Enjoy Vision. This is where you LASIK.
All right, thanks to Enjoy. Josh, I know you've been back-to-back weeks at Under Armour camps. We had the recruiting report on YouTube. It's been awesome kind of getting to see the guys that you're seeing as you talk about them. And the guys in Houston, I mean, just some physical freaks out there. And I know talking about DeMarco Murray, a couple running back prospects. And by the way, I guess we should talk about DeMarco's last really official act that he's committed as a coach at OU is throwing out the Yamaha on Twitter, which got everybody kind of wondering. And I think it had everybody wondering, did you see Yamaha out there on Sunday, I guess it was, in Houston?
There's definitely a feeling that I did. Now, obviously, over the last guys, I mean, what would you say over the last 6 hours? This has all gotten pretty interesting with the DeMarco Murray thing. When I think we all, like we said earlier, were kind of feeling that it was going to be kind of a non-issue, but it's obviously turned more real, and you kind of wondered. But I think the timing of that tweet, and then you see the announcement yesterday from Tory Blaylock that he will be announcing his commitment on March 29th, so a little over a week from now. I doubt those two things are completely unrelated. Also, in talking to Tory, the only official visit he has set right now is June 21st for the barbecue weekend at Oklahoma. And I asked him, is there anything else you're looking at, anything else you're kind of thinking about? And he was like, no, we're going to look at some stuff, but not real sure. So I don't think Tory definitely didn't come out and say it. At the same time, I don't think he was that concerned about subterfuge and trying to confuse me with his plans, because there's not a lot of arrows that aren't pointing to Oklahoma for him right now.
Yeah, I mean, kind of like you say, I mean, the read on it that you have is basically Oklahoma seems to be the only school he's really that interested in right now.
Yeah, and again, I mean, and this is a guy that Oklahoma identified early. DeMarco Murray's been on him for a long time. And, I think it's also kind of been something of a domino situation where you had Tiger Ryden, another guy from Dallas that they were really high on. He picks A&M. So there's just kind of a limiting of options both for him and for Oklahoma, and I think they're just kind of starting to line up with each other. And, as far as seeing him over the weekend, he's what you expected. He's an explosive guy. For those that don't know, his father, Derek, played in the NFL for a long time. We talked about it in the recruiting report, was a longtime guy with the Chiefs in that kind of Priest Holmes era. So very good player in his own right. But, Tory is a north and south runner. I kind of compared him to like a Tatum Bell, because he doesn't want to dance. He doesn't want to move laterally. He wants to stick his foot in the ground and, let legitimate track speed take over. So you saw a lot of that in camp, when he would get upfield and he'd turn a linebacker. If the linebacker had to turn his hips at all, the game was over.
It's just funny thinking about, just being done if you have to turn your hips around, and especially in the one-on-one stuff with the linebackers. But I think we all kind of know how that usually goes for the linebacker and the one-on-one drills at those camps.
It's the most unfair thing in sports. Yeah. It's, it'd be like, I don't care how good the linebacker is. It's like Caitlin Clark playing one-on-one with LeBron. Like, Caitlin Clark could be an amazing basketball player, but they're just a physical thing that's never going to make that fair.
I don't know. Just shoot over him. I don't know if he can jump anymore. That'd be a tough matchup. No, it does sound positive, though. And in terms of how he would fit into the running back room, how do you – obviously, he's still a young, very young player. How would you see him kind of stack up with some of the guys that are already in the room?
What's interesting is his style of play kind of reminds me of Gavin Sawchuk, kind of that, like I said, that same kind of speed guy, very much a north and south runner. He's not – what has always surprised me about Gavin once he got to Oklahoma is how physical he's always been. He's willing to take on a block. He's not a guy that sheds away. And I'm not saying Tory's not. Tory, that's just not something you see a lot on tape because the opportunities aren't really there. He plays for a very good Atascocita program. He's going to be hitting the line of scrimmage at full speed, and once he does, he's racing against DBs and that kind of stuff. So it's a little tough to know how he would fit into that role. But I mean, yeah, you talk about being able to do some different stuff with him. Like I'd love to see him on some toss sweep stuff where you're just trying to get him to the edge as quickly as possible. You could do some jet motion stuff with him. Like again, it's not real complicated with Torrey Blake. Like get him running toward the end zone as fast as you possibly can, and I think you're gonna do pretty well.
See, when we do the YouTube shows, basically what happens, Eddie puts everything on a disc, or I put it on. He puts it on the server. I put it on a disc, and I'm sitting there, and so I have all this B-roll of these guys at camp, and I'm previewing it before we start the show, and I'll be honest with you, there was no way in hell that I thought Jonathan Hatton was a running back while I was watching his footage. He had to be like a linebacker, defensive end. Just a monster.
In the video that Josh sent back, he looked like he was 6'3".
Yeah.
Like he looked like a monster. I initially, when clicking on, just going through and downloading every clip, I initially thought, I wonder why this linebacker's doing running back position drills. Like that was initially my thought. And then I was like,
they're putting the linebackers through some weird
You start
drills
matching up the numbers, and it's like, oh, that's Jonathan Hatton.
I mean, just incredible looking.
Yeah, he really. I mean, that's what you're drawing up. And I thought George made a good physical comparison yesterday during the recruiting report to Joe Mixon. I think there is some comparison at the same age. Very long-legged, long-armed guys. I would say Hatton, you watch him on tape, he's more physical than Joe was at that point in his career. Like I said, plays big-time ball in Texas, plays for one of the best programs in the state of Texas in Cibolo Steel. They're kind of just outside of San Antonio. And, again, it's so funny because you see him, and I had the same thought. Like, you see him from a distance, and, like, there's a big huddle of running backs, and then you're like, well, who's that giraffe? Like, who's the big, tall, like, he just looks different than everybody else.
And is he 26?
And
he's 26.
Yeah. He's just going to be a junior. And the thing, again, like I've talked to them about this a few times. This is a kid that's telling me he wants to run 10.6 in track this year. So, like, you add that size, that speed, and Steele didn't, I mean, like, he had a couple of, I want to say he probably got close to 1,000 yards this year, maybe somewhere in that. But, I mean, Steele hasn't even let him loose yet. Like, he was splitting a lot of time. And so this year, I think you'll see his stock really grow. But in the new updated rankings for On 3, I think they've got him at number 31 overall. And I think that's pretty fair. I mean, he is a physical specimen. Now, we know running backs, as time gets on, he may dip a little bit as you find more defensive linemen and quarterbacks and some of the positions that are a little more value when it comes to rankings. But this is there's not a lot to not like. And, I asked him during the interview, I said, what is it that makes you so certain about Oklahoma? Because he's a kid that by the time this is done, I think he could go about anywhere he'd ever want to go. And he just, he talked about when he goes there, he just feels like he's at home. Like he just feels so comfortable with DeMarco Murray, with Brent Venables, with the program itself. And I mean, I'm not saying nothing could ever happen here, but he seems like a kid for this young. He's pretty locked in.
Now, were you nervous at all before you talked to Jonah Williams? And if people don't know what that is in reference to, you crystal balled him and or recruiting prediction machined him, whatever. By the way, Eddie said Under Armour Chicago, by the way, with the Joe Mixon thing. That was definitely Rivals.
Oh, yeah.
The 5-star. That was the 5-star. The first time we saw Joe. And by the way, the Hatton, it's a great physical comparison, but it makes me have to say it. There's been so little that we've talked about Joe Mixon since the incident just down the road. But it's always kind of been taboo. But like Joe Mixon, when he was in high school and we were at that camp, like he could have run that entire camp with the receivers, and you wouldn't have known. That's how special he was.
The single play that I literally every time that I think about it or think about Joe just in general was when he tipped the ball to himself over the defender.
Yeah.
Over on like the far side at Soldier Field. I'll always remember where I was when that happened.
Like he could be a DB if he wanted to be a DB. I mean, like he's too big now.
I know that everybody talks about Adrian Peterson not comparing the two, but just from a physical standpoint, he was a specimen. He was a man amongst boys.
Well, like Leonard Fournette was at that camp too, and it was like there was a clear, definite like Leonard Fournette's a running
was just
back,
so like massive up top.
Right,
Like,
right.
He was just a bodybuilder almost compared to Mixon just being so thick.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if that's a good way to characterize
Thick
it,
with
but
two Cs, yeah.
it definitely it was insane. He had that ass.
Yeah,
Joe Mixon.
But yeah,
No doubt about it.
Unbelievable. I mean, like you said, it's not. It's
That was
not,
a really good camp.
It was. I mean,
They had a good run of really, really strong.
what's his name? The safety Jamal from Arlington.
Jamal Adams.
Jamal Adams was.
Was
at
it
that
Jamal
camp.
Adams?
Yeah, Jamal. Adams,
it was Jamal Adams.
I remember.
Joe Mixon and was it O.J. Howard? Those are two guys that when
he was
they
the very
showed up,
first Rivals 5-star. Yeah,
he was in Atlanta.
in Atlanta, right?
Those are two guys that it was just like, holy shit.
Yeah,
this
Josh
is a different
remembers
type
my
of.
O.J. Howard crush well. So anyway, I want to get back to some of what you saw, but no, I gave you a chance. I'm sorry, we went in a total different direction. But were you nervous before you talked to Jonah Williams?
I was, and there is added incentive to why I was a little nervous. His father is not only an attorney in the county in which I live, but is a justice of the peace in Galveston.
Oh, wow.
So
Really?
he sits on a court. So Jonah is, I mean, but the thing is, like, I say, hey, what's going on, Jonah? Like, I'm like, okay, this may be a deal where he tells me he don't want to talk to me. Like, that was a possibility, and he didn't do it that way at all. He smiles, like, oh, Josh, how you doing? Like he remembered me, and I had met his father I met him at the game. Obviously that I went to see him last year, but it also ran into him at a Dick's Sporting Goods of all places here in Houston area. So I was a little nervous, but Jonah was great. He was good to talk to, answered the questions. And I thought it was very interesting that he talked about taking all of his official visits. And then I asked him if he was going to take one to Oklahoma, and he goes, yeah, that'll probably be during the season. Like, that's kind of the outlier of the group. And I would think that he's planning to take that visit uncommitted anywhere else. So you would think that bodes pretty well for Oklahoma. And I can tell you, talking to multiple other reporters that were around, there was about 20 of us there on Sunday in Houston. I don't know that it was consensus, but I would say overwhelming majority feel that Oklahoma is still going to be very tough to beat for Jonah Williams.
If he ever goes to college.
That's what I was getting ready to say. Is it seems like the overwhelming, just kind of like summary of the Houston camp was not just OU being on top. It was, is Major League Baseball going to be the biggest factor in his decision moving forward? Yeah.
A guy that, and I want to say, I got to give him a shout out because I know he listens to the pod sometimes. Mike Roach of 24/7. After the camp, I'm talking to him, and he was lamenting that he saw Eddie in Dallas and did not get a chance to catch up with Eddie. He was very sad about that.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
I love Roach.
Yeah. So, but yeah, Mike was talking about, he had and it was a great quote. So I've given him credit twice, and that's just because it's only fair. He mentioned, talking to Jonah, and Jonah kind of said, yeah, if I was a first round pick in baseball, that would be pretty tough to walk away from, was basically the idea. Who could fault him?
And I would, exactly. And I would also say too that, it's such a long ways away in talking about the Major League Baseball draft for Jonah, but at the same time, I think that it would be a little bit different because so many times you see guys that could be first round draft picks. Baseball teams are going to have some type of, I guess, handshake agreement, I guess, in a way that, hey, if we take you, you are going to sign that contract. You are going to come. And who knows? Maybe, he has a really good senior football season, and all of a sudden, not to say that the attention isn't already there, but maybe things would change after going through another football year.
Yeah, because we all know, I mean, with the major leagues, they put in that rule now with the rookies, and if you win Rookie of the Year, you get an extra draft pick. they're finally starting to wake up to that you can incentivize and make the draft a big deal, and it feels like you're watching a lot of these major league teams kind of respond to that. So I think they know more than ever. Those first-round picks, man, you can't mess around with those guys. You got to hit your points and have your draft slot money ready to go. And, Jonah's going to command a lot, but at the same time, does Jonah slip a little bit just because of that concern? Like, oh, this guy really can go play college football, play 3 years, and, he'll be a first-round draft pick in the NFL possibly. So there is that weight where, we've all seen guys that were valued baseball prospects that slipped a little bit because people weren't sure they were going to sign that contract.
Let's not give Major League Baseball too much credit. They are coming with the times, but they also did open the baseball season this morning in Seoul, Korea at 3 a.m. for the two local teams that were playing with San Diego and the Dodgers.
By the way, I was thinking about this.
At least they've got momentum, Eddie.
No,
now they got these 2 games, and then we all sit around for 5 days with nothing to do. Like, why the hell would you not just start it?
When you guys were talking about Jonah Williams the other day, it to me it strikes me funny because now in the age of NIL you can do whatever you want, but
sure,
the fact that there was a day and age where you could play professional baseball and still play college football, like that they allowed that to happen. It's like it seemed like it was like this crazy loophole back then, when in reality, like I don't know how that differs now with NIL. Like Jonah Williams, like would teams be more I mean, it seems like if you're drafted that high, it's just like with Kyler Murray. Teams expect you to stick with baseball, not to have 1 foot in and 1 foot out. But the fact that his dad's a judge and justice of the peace or whatever, and a lawyer, I mean, that all kind of screams like, well, I bet his parents would want him to go to college at least to start.
Just to put it in perspective, I don't think that, like, let's say 20th pick. Last year, the slot value for the 20th pick was $3.75 million. I don't know if particular teams would be offering a freshman that in terms of NIL value, but who knows? I mean, the way that NIL is going right now, all of a sudden you could start seeing them creeping into the threes.
Yeah, I don't even think you'd have to get into the threes. You just have to get somewhere where he's like, okay, I'm going to be comfortable, like delaying baseball,
sure,
and I'm going to make $1 million.
And who knows? Maybe the kid just loves
500,000, whatever.
Maybe he loves baseball enough that he'd say, giving up $2 million to go, or getting $2.5 more million. It doesn't really matter to me. I want to go play the sport.
Well, and I think it's interesting too, Eddie, when you think about this from Jonah's perspective. Like, this is at a camp going into his junior. Jonah doesn't need to work out at that camp, and Craig Hobart, one of the camp directors, guy that I know some people will remember the name from ESPN,
sure,
was talking about it, and he said, Jonah wasn't sure if he was going to work out, he wasn't sure if he was going to test, he just kind of hemmed and hawed, and finally he was like, I'm going to go do it. And Jonah talked about it in the interview. He's like, I just like to compete, man. I like to be out here, doing something. And a kid that doesn't love football wouldn't have done that. Like, he'd have just been like, screw it. Like, I don't need to do this. I got a baseball game on Tuesday night or whatever it may be, so I'm just going to lay low. But, and on top of all this, I mean, he was a freak. I mean, he looked the part, was one of the few guys that could really deal with the receivers and the running backs. I would have loved to see a Torrey Blaylock and Jonah Williams rep. I didn't get that chance. It didn't happen. But yeah, it was
just the clip
again,
that
we can talk about all the other stuff. He is everything he's advertised to be.
I mean, the clip that you had where he turns, runs with the wide receiver, and then steps in front of the football and picks it off. For a guy that big and the position that he plays or would play at Oklahoma, it's a little insane to think about his other cohorts in that class or at the safety / hybrid position. It's really insane to think.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No,
just real quickly. And I know there's been a lot of talk about linebacker with him. The more I watch him, it's not just, what does he grow into? I don't think it fits his style of play. I don't think Jonah Williams wants to be the guy coming up and filling a run lane against a 320-pound guard in the SEC. And that's not like, he won't do it or he's not fit. Like, that's not how he sees himself. That's not what he's most comfortable doing. and he's clearly got the athletic skills to play safety. So, like, why mess around with it? Why?
Sure.
Again, that the cheetah role seems like he was born to play it to me. But either way, like I just a pure linebacker. I think I was part of that train for a while, but I think I've changed my mind about it.
Can you be too long to play linebacker? Just looking at him and like the way that he moves, it seems like you just don't really see that a whole lot.
You almost wonder, like, is that Kip Lewis? Like, is that why? Like, Kip Lewis is like, I know he's not 6'3", but he's so long-armed, long-legged. Like, I mean, he's a unique body type, and you wonder sometimes, like, can you get enough, trunk on you? I mean, you can have enough on the backside to be a linebacker. Jonah's plenty big, but I don't know. Like, I think everybody sees like height, weight, and says, okay, he's this or he's that. And again, I admit, like, I've been part of that conversation, so I've totally owned that. But with safety, he just looks at home. He just looks natural. And like Eddie said about that clip he's talking about, this is not a guy that can't run and cover. He can absolutely do it. So, again, I've got to think that's part of the pitch with OU. They say, hey, we can start you at free or strong or whatever. And if that doesn't work, worst case scenario, you're going to slide to Cheetah, which is like a hybrid.
All right, there's a couple more things I want to get to regarding recruiting. One being Andrew Marsh, who you saw back-to-back MVP wide receivers at the Under Armour camps who OU has interest in or has commitments from, and then the Kevin Sperry stuff. But George and I, we're fully into this thing, man. We got our factor. We have been eating our factor meals. And man, mine is fantastic. I mean, I got a bunch of chicken and a little bit of pork, but I've become like an oven guy. I don't know about you, George. Are you happy just using the microwave?
I'm very lazy, which is why I have factor meals, and why I've been using them is because you can just put 2 minutes in the microwave. It's done immediately, and it tastes really good. I've been on the vegan and high protein one. It's Chef's Choice, so they give you a lot of different options. And the chicken risotto was very good, but it's been fantastic to use for me so far. I know Summer of George is right around the corner, trying to lose a few pounds, so I've been trying to eat really healthy, and this makes my life 10 times easier.
Well, and what it is if you go and you sign up at factormeals.com/Sooners50 and use code Sooners50, you'll get 50% off of your order. And look, I mean, we all know going out to eat, I mean, Josh, you got a family. Food prices are just out of control now. I mean, even if you just go to McDonald's, I mean, Big Mac meals are like $12, it seems like, or something like that. And this is a way to kind of counter that because, what you do is you just sign up, you say what plan you want to be on. If you're more into chicken and stuff like that than fish, like I am, you get a bunch of great different, varieties of chicken, to made up certain ways. But you can also get snack smoothies. You can discover a wide variety of easy options that'll last the entire day, like breakfast, midday bites, and more. So just sign up and save. They've done the math. It's less expensive than takeout. Every meal's dietitian approved to be nutritious and delicious, and George and I can vouch for that. They are delicious. Head to factormeals.com/Sooners50 and use code Sooners50 to get 50% off. That's code Sooners50 at factormeals.com/Sooners50 to get your 50% off. All right, last one I wanted to hit on, Andrew Marsh, the wide receiver. You had some fantastic footage of him from earlier in the year or last year in high school.
He's just incredible. Every time that Josh goes and sees him, I think we can just plan to do a YouTube show because he's going to send back some incredible video.
And the thing is, Josh, like he's like the thing about the Under Armour stuff and Rivals and all those camps is you don't get a chance to see how physical someone is until they put the pads on and you watch them in a high school game. Like, for all the things you can say about Andrew Marsh, I know you were talking yesterday about people kind of question his top end speed and things like that. But just physically, man, I mean, and it's not even hitting people, it's just going up one-on-one. He just takes what he wants on a football field.
He really does. And, the comparisons are pretty short as far as ball skills. When you talk about what he can do when the ball is in the air, he is one of those guys that you see. And I know people will say, like, what are ball skills? Like, what does that mean, Josh? And it's just like being able to position yourself in a way that you're going to win when the ball arrives. Like you're going to jockey for position a little better than the other guy, whether it's, like getting physical with them, whether it's finding, kind of planning the trajectory a little bit better, knowing when and where you need to jump. It's all these little things. And on top of that, it's having really great length and ability to go get the ball with your hands. Andrew Marsh is a guy kind of like Elijah Thomas that we talked about a week ago. A lot of confidence in his hands. He'll go snag it. He's not a guy that's going to be a body catcher or doing a lot of double catches, stuff like that. He goes out and grabs it very naturally. Guy with really, really big hands. And the thing that I love about Andrew, and like I feel like it's if his career takes off the way it could be like almost his calling card. It's like you're going to see like one of those NFL films, like. And the most unnerving thing about Andrew Marsh is that no one ever hears him speak on the field. Like he's not one of these Terrell Owens or Randy Mosses, like letting you know, like, I'm coming, man. I'm going to be the man here. You wouldn't know Andrew Marsh is in the room if you weren't looking for him. He's that quiet of a guy, and he just goes about his business, man. And he, like I said in the recruiting report, it's almost more insulting because he's like, hey, good job, man, after he totes somebody for a touchdown, or, it's very much that Miami Heat kid, good job, good effort, that kind of deal. And he's, like I said, he is a ton of fun to watch and just a real technician. Like he's one of those guys that when he shows up, pretty much wherever he shows up, he will have an early impact. I don't think there's any doubt because he is going to be ready. I think it's just about him putting on more weight, getting bigger and stronger. And as that happens, his game can become even more diverse.
We talked about it a little bit in terms of how he compares to somebody that we saw the week before that we've talked about in Elijah Thomas. Both won MVP at the last two Under Armour camp stops in Dallas and Houston. Maybe not so much as comparing the two because we did that on the YouTube show. How do you think that they would play off one another in the same recruiting class?
That was when we had that conversation, Eddie, about comparing them. I kind of thought, how would that look? What would that be? Because they are similar frames, similar styles, that kind of thing. Now, they come at it a very different way, but the ways that they win are similar. But for me, I think it would largely come down to I think they could be lined up opposite. I don't think it's a deal where, they can't do various things because Andrew talked about with OU, they want to put him in the slot some, they want to put him outside some. They're very comfortable, like I said, with his level of, his IQ as a receiver, it's very high. And so I think they can throw a lot at him early on, and he can kind of move around, and they can kind of say, Elijah, we want you to start here, and we'll let you grow into other stuff. But Marsh has played in a more advanced offense. Like there's just he's a little ahead from a recognition standpoint. So I think they could work well together. I think they would probably complement each other very well because in the few areas where maybe Marsh isn't elite, I think Thomas has a little more upside. And where Thomas still has to learn, I think Marsh is very ready to help you pretty early on.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to update breaking news kind of with DeMarco.
George. As we've been doing the podcast, I think you can just eliminate everything that we talked about at the beginning because, George, go ahead.
Yeah, I've been talking to a few people, including On 3 Zone, Pete Nakos, and he is, I think, about to report a story about DeMarco staying in Oklahoma and getting a pretty good raise.
Good deal.
Yeah, I'm in the process of updating our thread.
And by the time this is out, I think that we can go ahead and say Pete's been all over this story.
Yeah, Pete's the man. He's talking to the highest of people that are in the know on this.
Well,
I think is the way to say
that's obviously good news. It's good news for us, just in terms of not having to put together a running back hot board because I don't even know where you would have begun. I think obviously Tashard Choice would have been out there just in terms of Oklahoma fans remembering the name and maybe stealing him back from Texas. It would have been a kind of a fun story, but
I think the other one would
neither
have been
here nor there.
Dalen McCullough, just because his connection with Seth Luttrell
that would have been interesting
at Indiana.
That name wouldn't even have come to mind. That's a really good point.
So, but anyways,
why aren't you guys talking about Adrian Peterson's what I want to know? That was
if Adrian
what are you guys talking
if
about?
he wants to come coach, he could be a volunteer. I don't know about his money situation. I don't know if he's having any more estate sales, but that would have been fun.
Ooh.
Well, and just to throw this out there, breaking news: DeMarco Murray's agreed to terms on a new deal to remain in Oklahoma after overtures from Ohio State, and Pete Nakos from On3 with the story to come. I'm sure by the time this podcast is posted, well, it definitely will be. By the time we're done with the podcast, I'm sure it'll be posted. So, yeah, all that panic we put you into before the podcast started,
disregard.
I'm now retitling the thread update. DeMarco Murray seatbelt sign is off because I said buckle up. No one will get that.
Put the car in park first. That'd be the safest thing.
Well, you're on a plane.
Well, I hope it's not a Boeing. And just by saying that, I might be murdered. Josh, just real quick to wrap up everything from the Under Armour Houston stop. Landon Rink earned an invite to the Under Armour game. He was extremely excited about it. I got a big kick out of your interview with him because you don't often see guys that are like genuinely excited about something that they worked for. But he certainly fit that bill, and it's kind of interesting with his dad being a former Texas defensive lineman, I believe. Was he a defensive lineman or did he? Okay,
Yep,
you're shaking your head. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It is just somewhat interesting in terms of OU and A&M kind of being the lead dogs for his services.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe being in Texas, like A&M people don't find this as interesting as I do, but it was one of the things I really wanted to ask him. You know, like a kid, his dad grew up at Texas, obviously grew up a Texas fan. What would, 10-year-old Landon Rink have thought about the possibility of playing at A&M or Oklahoma as his two most likely choices? I'm sure that would have been, unthinkable to him. And as I'm sure it would have for us in the reverse situation when we were kids, So it was interesting to hear him kind of respond and say, yeah, but I know some Texas reporters talked to him while he was there and just kind of is there anything Texas could do to change this momentum? And he didn't rule it out, but it was kind of like, like it didn't feel like there was anything special that could change where things were for he in Texas. And I think Texas prioritized some other guys, and that's, obviously that's the way it goes in recruiting. But it's interesting that A&M and OU have seen him as a real priority. And again, I talked about it in the notes I had initially put up, and I've mentioned it a few other times around the site. This is a guy that's going to show up and he'll be a 4-year contributor wherever he goes. Like Landon Rink will play as a freshman. Like I don't have a lot of doubt. He is, again, has been coached since he was a little boy by a guy that knows what he's talking about. And now his father, I know he's a coach at Cy-Fair, and I'm almost certain he's the defensive line coach, but I say that just, with one foot in the water because I haven't checked that to just be 100% accurate, but I'm almost certain that's correct.
I might be dipping into a terrible, terrible, terrible comparison, but just watching him, is there a little bit of Matt Diamond there?
Oh my God!
Is it just because he's a white guy and maybe a little bit on the short side? And I say short. I think he's listed at 6'2".
Yeah, and I would say, and that was one thing I will say. I've said some things about Landon being maybe a little shorter. I would say he's 6'1 and a half, 6'2". Like he's not quite as small as I remembered from the last time I'd seen him, and he's also his frame starting to fill out more and more. So I'd guess he's probably 6'2", 270 right now, something like that. And the Diamond thing is interesting, Eddie, because kind of like Matt, you're not sure. Is he a defensive tackle? Is he a three down front defensive end? Like you can move him around a little bit, kind of depending on the situation. So again, and that's we talk about this all the time, but that's part of what this group, Venables, Bates, this group, they clearly love are defensive linemen that give them some options. Like, we run this group out. We're not dead set that we have to be this front or this package or whatever. They can, as a team goes hurry up or no huddle, okay, we can throw a 3 down front at you. Okay, we can throw bear at you. They can do a lot of different stuff from the same personnel grouping by and large.
By the way, Eddie, my comparison that I would like to make is maybe Justin Chasen.
I hope he's this crazy. But I don't know.
Maybe
if
not as hurtful.
Just keep screwdrivers away from him.
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
Talk about an incident that we were talking about that a couple weeks ago, Josh, that would just never have even come to his arrival in Norman had that happened these days.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Different time.
Oh, 100%.
Is that like, Terry, we talk a lot about like the final straw for Bob. There's a part of me that thinks like Justin was almost like the beginning of like, this is what I'm dealing with. Like, this is where we're at.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's that guy had a lot of problems, and I don't think it went well for him, even when he was on campus and things. So it's one of
he wasn't here very long, right?
No, I can't remember.
What's crazy? He was 09, so he would have been part if he stayed around. He'd have been part of that team that Bob had all those problems with Franks and Haynes and that whole group, where he just expelled like 7 guys because he was like, I can't deal with your crap anymore.
Well, that was the class that Camille Jackson announced he was transferring to Texas A&M, and Kevin Sumlin had to call me and said, he ain't coming here. Please tell people he's not coming here. He's screwing with my wide receiver class.
Camille doing some training work in Dallas. It become a pretty respected wide receiver trainer in the Dallas area as of the last couple of years.
That. Wasn't he working with somebody that ended up here for a minute?
Yeah.
I can't remember who it was, though. Somewhere right after maybe C.D. Lamb's group, like 2018, 2019,
would have been like
something
a
like
Trajan
that.
Bridges or something?
No, I don't know. I can't remember.
I see the connection you made there, but no. I'm almost certain Trajan was a Margin Hooks guy, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right.
What did I see? Mikey Henderson landed somewhere finally?
Yeah, I want to say,
man, we're just going through.
Was it a JUCO? Yeah, there's a characteristic flaw with a bunch of these guys.
Or something like that.
Tarleton State.
Tarleton. I think it was Tarleton.
Okay.
It was one of those.
And is Bridges at Utah? Did he end up at Utah? Trajan Bridges?
Bob says no.
Bob says no. Official fact.
He was headed down. He was headed down that road.
I think he took a trip.
Because I know he
to
took
Utah,
a couple visits. Yeah, and then I don't know if like it was kind of one of those weather balloon scenarios where they're like, let's see what everybody thinks about this and knows about this, and then
it kind of feels like I remember seeing something on Bridges here recently, and it was almost an insinuation that he was waiting for the spring semester to get over. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if he had ever ended up anywhere this semester. I really don't remember. But yeah, just in terms of some other football items.
By the way, Kevin Sperry. I think we need to just hit on that real quick.
Yeah.
Because obviously upheaval, all that stuff. And let's go ahead and we can get Bob in here. Unless, George, is there anything that you wanted to say today?
No, I've got a lot going on.
I was just went down.
The NACO stuff just went down, and also OU's 2025 SEC opponents will be released at 2:00 today.
By the way, I will say on that, and I put something up on the board after I saw your tweet about it, George. I don't expect a lot of change. In fact, I would go as far to say the 2024 schedule,
flipped.
Everything's flipped.
Yeah. It's going to be, they're going to go to.
So don't expect to. Now, it's kind of cool that you'll have LSU and Ole Miss and Auburn, Missouri, all those teams coming to Norman, but don't expect it to be like, don't expect Florida to be on the schedule next year.
I think it's just going to flip, and they'll go to Tuscaloosa, Knoxville, and LSU will come here. Like Eddie said, it'll just kind of flip. And I think that this has always kind of been the plan for the SEC is to do the 8+1 type schedule, and then for 2 years, and then I think in 2026 you could see it go to 9 conference games.
So Josh, I mean, Kevin Sperry, a lot of uncertainty. I think just about frame of mind, where the family is. What could that mean for Oklahoma? What do you take out of this? Announcement that he'll be in his 3rd high school now.
It's one of these interesting situations because we all know, guys, Brent Venables has talked about this repeatedly, that they don't want these guys that bounce around from school to school to school. Now, they certainly understand situations where a guy might be going to a better situation for himself. Like David Stone and Del City folks, cover your ears, but going to IMG and getting all that training and working with NFL coaches, like that's a thing you can understand. It's a different kind of move. But this, you win a state title at Carl Albert. You're playing with all these guys. You're right there in the shadow of Oklahoma's program. And then now you move back to Denton Guyer, which, again, there's plausible reasons. You mentioned it, Kerry, the kind of reuniting the family back in Dallas. Mom had never made the move to Oklahoma City just because there were some issues with, her work and all these things. So it all makes reasonable sense. But at the same time, like, you're starting to see, like, is there a pattern here? Is this a problem? And, you just kind of wonder how that'll be processed. I don't think Oklahoma's going to say, hey, we're done with this or anything like that. But it just kind of, I would expect Oklahoma to say, hey, can we let's talk about this a little bit. Let's make sure this is not something that it's about, you being unhappy with playing time or how the offense is being run, because, you get to college, you're not going to dictate those things either.
I got to think, obviously he posted a pic kind of saying, when one of his old visits, I guess probably back in the summer.
That's his mom.
Was it his mom
that
posted that?
Posted that. Yep.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So, that kind of gives you like, okay, we're still with Oklahoma, But I got to think, if he comes up this summer, he'll probably do that again where he spends as much time with Seth Luttrell as possible, maybe, building that relationship like he had with Jeff Lebby. Maybe we have to kind of wait till that happens or doesn't happen to read more into where Oklahoma sits in the future with him.
Yeah.
Because, he's not talking
like
a lot. In these cases, actions speak a lot louder than words sometimes.
And I think it also goes to say, and something we've talked about on here, we've talked about it on YouTube, we talked about it on the board probably ad nauseum, that usually a quarterback is very, very active, very vocal in kind of being the centerpiece in a recruiting class. And
the thing is, we know that what was it, last Sunday? I was after Future Freaks. He tweeted out one of the the things he's done all along whenever a commitment came along.
Yep.
I know Bob tracks this better than I ever do. So it's not like he hasn't been there, but you kind of keep waiting for him to go and do like an interview with somebody, and really sit down and say, okay, we were looking around. We wanted to make sure when Coach Lebby left, that was our real connection, and that's who we really loved at Oklahoma. But we're good now. This is all set. And it just kind of hasn't happened. And I know, and again, people are like, oh, Josh, you're being alarmist. And maybe a little. But at the same time, I've heard some things that make me think there are a few schools that are taking notice of this as well and saying, okay, let's just check in with Kevin Sperry and kind of see what his temperature is at the moment.
Is it almost time for OU to do the same with other guys?
I don't think that would be crazy. And again, the thing that a lot of people, we talk all the time about Grady Adamson. I know, Eddie is a devoted lover of Grady's game and, that kind of thing. But at the same time, guys, where did Seth Luttrell come from? What's his high school of origin?
Muskogee. Does Muskogee have a good quarterback as well, Josh?
They have a state title winning quarterback. So, who we saw 2 weeks ago and can absolutely sling it.
Regardless of the Grady Adamson and or Jamarian Ficklin talk, both are. It's almost criminal. It's criminal now to the point of them not getting the interest that either of them should get.
Yeah, like I said, and you and I have talked about this, kind of on and off record. Eddie, is I think so much of this is stuff that happens. It's a byproduct of the transfer portal. And you're going to get a lot of schools that after the spring break, they'll know, okay, who's leaving, who's coming back, what are we going to look like going into 2025? And I think you'll see some more offers come in for those guys because they're just too talented. And there's too many other good players in Oklahoma that coaches are going to come by during the spring evaluation period and go see and say, why is, School X the best offer that Grady Adamson has, or why would Jamarian Ficklin end up at this school when he could go to a legit Power 4 or whatever we're calling it now type of program. So I think there's a lot of room for movement with those two. And again, I would expect they're both going to see their place in the quarterback recruiting world pick up before too terribly long. And if Kevin Sperry were to look around, then I think it would be probably one of those two Oklahoma would move to pretty quickly, honestly.
So where do you stand then? Let's just throw it out there. Do you think Kevin Sperry ever winds up at Oklahoma as things stand now?
And I think it's a math thing. And I've heard it from enough that I think there is some interest in looking around a little bit. I'm not saying he wants to decommit. I don't want anybody to get too out of control, but just kind of hey, things have changed at Oklahoma. I'd like to talk to some other schools and just kind of see what that looks like. And I don't mean necessarily from Kevin Jr. I just think the family is a little unsure of where they stand with Oklahoma. I think that's the way they see it from what I've gathered. So what I would say is, as they look around, there's just not going to be a lot of premier opportunities. There's not going to be a lot of programs that don't have their 2025 quarterback already in place that you're going to say, well, yeah, I'd be comfortable leaving the situation at Oklahoma as an SEC program, one of the 10 best programs in the country, however you want to term all that, and say, yeah, I'm going to go to Boston College. I don't think that's the way that's going to play out. So I think that's where it comes into a numbers game. Now, Texas A&M doesn't currently have a quarterback commitment, and they're the school. They're one of the two, along with Ole Miss, that I've kind of heard a lot, and that might try to just see if there's an opening there. They don't have a quarterback committed at A&M. At the same time, they do have a guy that they're pretty high on that I think they kind of want to see what happens with, and kind of they've built that relationship. They spent that time. He's been around their commitments, all that sort of stuff. So I think it's not something they're going to rush into, but if that fell through, it wouldn't shock me at all if Texas A&M tried to make a run at Kevin Sperry.
Very good. All right. Bob Przbillo is here. It's been – Josh, you've even had to be a little intrigued by watching Porter go off on the NCAA last 24 hours.
That was great. That's the stuff. I'm ready to go play for Porter Moser. I love that sort of hostility. I'm all for it.
Well, are you 6'10" and can you play with your back to the basket? Because they might be needing to look for something like that. I think just like everybody
Moser.
else in the NCAA.
Yeah, he wants no part with me.
Well, Bob, we talked about it off the top. It had to be a lot of fun for you watching Virginia play like that last night.
Yeah, I finally allowed myself maybe 5 minutes left in the second half. Like, they're not coming back. They're terrible. They are pathetic. They shouldn't have been in. Let's enjoy Colorado State just absolutely destroying them.
It's my Mountain West team. I will say, too, that it's never good when people that cover the Virginia baseball team are tweeting out halfway through the first half or at the end of the first half that the baseball team for Virginia outscored the basketball team in the first half yesterday.
14 points. I mean, this is what we knew would happen.
Last 9 minutes, yeah. Right? They didn't score a bucket.
That's why, Porter refused to name any schools Tuesday. But when you're looking, this team loses by 20 or 30 on the regular and scores 40 to 50 points on the regular. What in the world made them so eye-poppingly good that they had to be in?
I have to think that there were a lot of OU fans like me last night watching that game, not realizing that Jacob Groves had transferred to Virginia and watching them with 14 points, and you're just saying to yourself, you're screaming at your TV like, what the f***? Like, Jacob Groves, he's in that guy's in the tournament and Oklahoma's not? Like, and he's 1 for 8 or something on the night. I mean, infuriating. Like, if you could invent a storyline that would piss off OU fans more, you couldn't have succeeded more than they did last night.
Oh, yeah, that one. And then you have the fact that Oregon has to win the Pac-12 so that Rivaldo Soares doesn't get the dream.
Yeah.
Looking at Virginia's schedule throughout the year, it almost makes you more angry. And this, like I said at the top, This isn't a stand to get Oklahoma in the tournament. St. John's is more qualified. Indiana State's more qualified. Seton Hall's more qualified. Obviously, I think Oklahoma would have been more qualified. Pittsburgh probably has a little bit of an argument as well. They went to Virginia Tech, got beat by 24. They got beat by 25 at Cameron Indoor. They got beat by 24 at Wisconsin at a neutral site game. They got beat by 23 at Memphis. They got beat by 22 at Notre Dame. The only reason they got into the tournament is because they beat a surging Texas A&M team that surged at the end of the season. They had beat A&M way back during some of the holiday tournaments, and half of A&M's team wasn't even playing. It's insane. Like, the NCAA committee, and to get back to what Porter said yesterday, Bob, they at least need to have some type of criteria, because it is a little bit confusing when you look at this team got in because of their net rating.
Right.
This team got in because they didn't have any bad losses. There is no like blanket list of check boxes or boxes that need to be checked.
It's a lot like the college football playoff in terms of you're trying to get into the New Year's Six Bowl. It's like what matters to this team this year. Oh, but it doesn't matter to the other team that is going against them, or how we're trying to weigh who belongs in. This metric means more for this team compared to what it means for this one. And the only thing I really learned is that maybe 2 years ago Porter wasn't as crushed about being team 70 when they were the second team left out, 18 and 15, and I get maybe things were told to him that made him realize, okay, I may not like it, but I get it. And as we were 2 days removed from Selection Sunday, that still hadn't happened. It's still just, he had no answers to give to those players, to those families, as to why this dream was taken away.
It was like going to an interview and having basically a better resume than somebody, but they give the somebody the job because maybe they like them a little bit more, and they wouldn't tell you why. It was striking to me also in hearing Porter Moser's 30-minute press conference yesterday that opened with a 14-minute diatribe against the NCAA committee. I don't think until 5:15 on Sunday night it ever even crossed his mind that Oklahoma was going to get left out. Like, even as crazy as Saturday was, I don't think that it ever crossed that staff's mind that they were going to fall short.
There was, I mean, you talk about all the experts, they all had them in. Most of them did have them in the first four. Jerry Palm, very well respected, CBS, had him as a firm 10, not even in the play-in. And that was after the chaos. That was after the chaos, like, because we knew nothing changed with Sunday. The Sunday games were just for like seeding purposes, like my Illini going up to 3. But all the chaos Saturday,
better watch out in the second round,
had wrapped it up. So whoever was in by Saturday night, and all these experts still had the Sooners in, and so that's why I think they got that confidence that everything is still going to plan. Maybe we dropped a seed that we didn't want to, but we're absolutely still in. And then you started getting into the tournament, and you're like, I looked at all 8, 9s, and 7, 10s. You know, that you had to. There was nothing else that could have been different about it. And you start seeing, like, if Texas is a 7, you know OU's not a 10. Or, you know, you start thinking, okay, who are those teams I've been looking for? It got to that last region, that 8-9 matchup. Michigan State hasn't been called. Now they're a 9. Like, where the spots you thought for sure where they could be included are now taken away. And that harsh reality set in. They are not in.
And with that being said, Porter basically went through the thinking and turning down the NIT bid, which he could have just said, I don't give a shit about it, and I would have been fine. That's more than I need to hear. But having to make a decision in 25 minutes, basically, are you in or are you out, is complete bullshit.
It isn't, but it's the way. I mean, they play Tuesday.
I know.
You know,
Yeah,
like
sure.
the NIT just goes, all right, you're not in. Let's play Tuesday night, have a home crowd of some sort. And they went through it 2 years ago, and maybe they were better equipped to think, all right, maybe we don't make it. And also because it's his first year, maybe they still believe, let's build, let's get these young guys some time. And learning that it didn't matter, like guys like CJ Nolan and stuff, that didn't matter that they played in the NIT. They didn't grow older together anyway. So then you've got guys like Soares and Darthard who were dreaming as tournament or bust, and it ends up being bust. And then you get other teams like in Iowa who knew the entire week. Once they lost Big Ten tournament, we're going NIT. This is how we're going to get ready for it. Like, they're well equipped for that type of moment. There's no, oh, my bubble just got burst. We knew we weren't going anywhere. Where OU has to then come back and decide, all right, some of these guys been banged up too. Do you really want to put forth the effort to try to make this happen?
And I think you saw that on Tuesday night, just with teams that could give a shit about playing in NIT. See Providence. They get beat by Boston College. Kansas State got beat by Iowa. They kind of knew where they were headed, speaking of Iowa. And then, Central Florida got beat by South Florida. That was probably a pretty good matchup, that South Florida is just a better basketball team.
The other thing that I saw yesterday that was just like, holy hell. Like, McCullough being announced that he was out for the entire tournament for Kansas.
Awful. I feel terrible for the guy.
But he always played against OU.
Porter loved to bring that up. We played the full strength Kansas team twice, and that second time was without Soares and Hughley.
With that being said, you make more than 4 field goals, we're probably not even having this conversation because Oklahoma's into the tournament.
I mean, they literally, if you do this, you just do this, or you just do that. I mean, that's the problem.
They fell a game short.
You
needed
left
one more
yourself
win.
in that position
100%
to be left out.
100%. They fell a game short, and I think, Bob, that's where the conversation transitions into Porter year number 4. It's NCAA tournament or bust. Like, you have to make the NCAA tournament, or we're going to be talking about Oklahoma making a coaching change after 1 year in the SEC.
Yeah, and it can't be, we try to straggle these guys together, this group of ragtag, misfits who we didn't know where they were going to go, and we got them through the portal. If you can't retain a good chunk of the guys that you want to, that's my key word for the next month, is you want these guys to come back, then there is some sort of an issue, because you've had enough time to try to get things situated to where you want the program to run in a certain way. Now bring those guys back. Bring Javion McCullum back. Bring Jalen Moore back. Get Caden Cooper and Jacob Cole to still believe in what is still going on there. And because we absolutely get it. There's going to be people that hit the portal that 5 years ago never would have thought about it. They would have just come back for another year and would have tried to grow older together. That was the phrase Porter loved to use during his first year. Let's all grow old together as a team. That doesn't happen. But you can't be losing 6 or 7. You got to be losing like 2 or 3, and then being able to attack the portal the way that you feel that you can now. You feel better equipped to do it. Go out and get those guys for the second year in a row.
I almost think just as important as it is for retention and continuity within the roster, there needs to be some type of retention and continuity within the staff as well this season.
That's been just so interesting, from KT Turner, working his way up to Kentucky to a head coaching spot. David Patrick went to a head coaching spot. Then Emmanuel Dildy at the last second goes from OU to Duke. Like, these guys are making big steps up.
That's the other thing.
You can't fault them, but man, you'd love to have a cohesive staff. And now that you've been able to add a couple, so you have 5 assistant coaches. Is Ryan Humphrey still happy? Obviously, he's got the local ties. That's been one thing you've tried to lean on during the last couple of years. Brock Morris was a big-time addition from Ole Miss. Really like what he brought to the table. Hoping he is content with what he's been doing in Norman. But you've got to try to have that continuity for the first time between your staff, between retention of the players, to where you're just adding final pieces instead of starting from scratch for the 3rd straight year.
And let me be clear, you can't be mad at somebody for leaving Oklahoma to go to Kentucky or Duke, or even taking a head coaching job. A lot of it has been a little bit of just terrible luck, kind of like they had with the NCAA tournament this year. But at the same time, you do want to try to build some type of continuity within a staff that is going to be working with these players and developing these players, which leads you into the next conversation of Otega Owe didn't develop this year. Los Uzon, you could see some flashes, but overall, I would say there wasn't a whole lot of development.
They regressed from the start to the end of the
year. They were
with
good
Owe,
in
100%.
November, December, and then they kind of fell off a cliff a little bit, and then you start hearing rumors. I think we all heard them in February, Los and Otega are both thinking about hitting the portal. I don't know.
I'm a little surprised that neither has as we record this.
Yeah, as we are recording on Wednesday afternoon, neither has actually hit. But the thing with Los, and it's the one, I just point to it, if that is his mindset, and we all believe it is, then what in the world happened in that second game against Cincinnati? Because that was kind of, I don't want to say it's his tryout, his national tryout to say I'm still, a relevant factor for what I can be to a team. Like if I don't know how much infighting there really was, if there was any, with Javion McCollum and Los both trying to be the point guard. But with Javion being out with that shoulder injury, that could have been Los's time to say, I could average 20 and 10 if I was the premier guy. And instead, we all know he played one of the worst games that we've ever seen from an elite level player. So it's very odd for like some of these guys, and that's why I go back to want. Like if some guys didn't play above their level and they want to go, then maybe you wish them well. But you look at a Jalen Moore and a Javion McCollum, and I think those are the guys that if OU's NIL package and program is a lot better than what it used to be, you see it in the retention of those two guys.
No doubt.
Well, it's going to be an interesting offseason.
Yes, it will be. And it's only 45-day window. I know Porter was hoping it would go from 60 to 30, but it went from 60, 45. At least that gives you 15 days less.
Kill my hopes if you wish. Any chance, any remote chance, Brandon Garrison would give a look at OU?
Oh, you got to go for it. They'll go for it. Brandon will look. But I heard from the very first day, every single program in the Big 12 and SEC had contacted Garrison by Tuesday morning.
I mean, he's the number one prospect in the portal for a reason right now. The guy, he showed signs of somebody that could be a dominant, not just college basketball player, but he could be a really good NBA pro at some point in the next 4 or 5 years.
And he's going to get paid by somebody.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it.
And that won't be OU.
I mean, they could try.
You need David Stone connection. I know those two were tight once upon a time.
I have heard there is an affinity for him wanting to stay close to home, but I don't know if that means like Norman close. Lawrence is close. Fayetteville's close.
Yeah.
Other places are a lot more appealing, I would imagine.
All right. Look, it's spring. Lots of stuff going on.
There's been a lot of shit today.
Yeah, a lot of stuff has gone on.
Kind of saw how it all unfolded.
We'll still have. We're still planning on a stickball at some point. I know I heard Pearl wasn't happy before the show started, so I don't know what's going on there. I would imagine we're delaying that till tomorrow. Bob is nodding his head yes. So we'll see. We're not doing a family business this week because somebody is skiing. Mainly Mr. Isaac.
Spring break, baby.
Spring break. I think he's eternally on spring break. So I think I've invited Joe C to join you guys on stickball, so we'll see if that works out tomorrow.
Very good. NCAA tournament starts tomorrow. It's going to be fun.
It hasn't started yet? You're not one of those guys?
If OU would have been in, it would have started Tuesday or Wednesday, but because it hasn't, it starts Thursday morning at 11:08.
I mean, but if you got a On3 does have a bracket challenge. You can go sign up for that. A lot of great prizes and stuff. So we'll have links on the site and our message board too. So appreciate you guys signing up for that. That definitely would help us out a little bit. I'll
be putting in my picks tonight. I have not done a bracket.
I haven't either.
I did it this morning.
I've done one.
I reserve all rights to change.
Yeah.
But I'll just tell you right now, I'm an idiot. I did what I said I wasn't.
Too many upsets?
Well, no, not really. Not a whole lot. But I did what I said I would never do again, and I picked the team that I think is going to win the national championship.
That might get knocked out
with
early.
A storybook. I don't think they're going to get knocked out early.
Purdue.
I think they're one of the best teams in the country.
Oh, it's Purdue.
I have Purdue
Purdue
winning the national championship.
You're doing a Virginia thing where you go out in the first round as a one seed and then win it the next?
I picked those assholes last year, and they failed miserably.
I
think I think the backcourt is obviously older. Brendan Smith, Lance Thomas, all of those guys. I think that Edey's going to get what he gets. He's incredible. But those guys are going to have to knock down shots. Fletcher Lawyer needs to have a big couple weeks here over the course of the next month.
All right. Well, that's going to do it. Josh, you could have left a while ago, I think, and you would have been just fine. I think I might have been able to leave, too. It turned into a hoops report there.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do after this. I don't know what we have left to talk about, but I'm excited. I mean, I'm staring at my bracket, so I'm as excited as the guys are for sure.
Who do you have?
I went
Dang
with
it.
UConn. I went very chalky.
Houston? You staying with the hometown team?
No, I did. I had a three Big East final. I've got Creighton, Marquette, and UConn in the Final Four.
Big East gets 3 teams in. Big East gets 3 teams to the Final Four. I think that they would love you over on the East Coast.
Is Laney doing a mascots one yet?
No. So the funny part, you guys will love.
I'm
this
getting all my
because
picks from Laney after her appearance on the show last week.
I would say 10 years ago, Tiffany did a bracket at her hospital. I happened to win it. I was still actually paying attention to college basketball at that point in time. I won it. I won it again the next year. So like Tiffany's family has this idea that I really know college basketball. Like I know what's going on. So her mom hits me up this week and is like, hey, my friend needs you to fill out a bracket. Could you do it for her? I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll fill it out because I still know that even what I don't know, I know more than they know. And so I'm like, okay, sure. So I listen to John Rothstein on Pardon My Take, and I listen to a few other things. I'm like, all right, here we go. So that is basically the sum of my knowledge, and I have tried to help someone else out. Then I think they feel like they've got a good chance to win, and I don't have the heart to tell them that they're screwed.
Stop listening to Rothstein. John Fanta is the king. That needs to be said.
Okay.
All right, that's going to do it for us for this week. Good luck on your brackets, in your office pools, whatever, bet what you can afford, basically. George is going to be in Vegas during the tournament, so we might have to wire him some money at some point.
Have to save him.
Yeah. All right, that's going to do it. We'll be back again next week for another edition of the Unofficial 40 podcast right here on Soonerscoop.com.